A draft league is a special type of community-run Pokemon tournament hosted by fans for fans, okay? In my opinion, it's one of the coolest formats to play in, and it's also a lot of fun to watch.
Then I drafted what I think is a pretty nasty team.
So the goal is not last.
Howdy ho, YouTube. Jon-Luke VGC here. As you can tell by the beginning of this video, yes, I have joined a draft league. As a certified Glick Glazer, it is written in my contract that as soon as Wolf finishes a project, I must participate in another version of a similar project. Obviously, that's a joke. But when my friend Jay Jingles reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jon-Luke, I am actually starting my own draft league. Would you like to join?" I quickly said yes. It sounds like a really cool opportunity to learn. I've never actually done draft league before, and to play Pokemon in a way that I've never really played before. So there are 10 of us in the Ditto Draft League, which is what we call it, and we have some pretty big names. We have people like Siskamoo, Scooteezy, ShuckleKing, who runs the SPL, if you ever watch those videos. And somehow we got Justin Tang. So like, hey Justin, excited to lose against you in like week 4 or whatever. I don't remember which week we face. But yeah, so it's gonna be really, really cool. I'm very excited. So I'm gonna briefly explain the draft itself, like how we did it. I will talk about the philosophy of how I picked my Pokemon, and then we will actually look at the Pokemon. So let's kind of dive right into it. So the Ditto Draft League has 10 content creators, and the goal is to create content around draft. So I will post a new Draft League video every week, starting like I think middle December. I don't quite remember the exact start date. I have my first match. We recorded like 2 weeks ahead. So I have my first match for the Ditto Draft League this week, but it won't actually, this will come out next week, and then the following week is when the first video will come out. Our goal was to start after LAIC, but finish up before Champions, our supposed Champions release. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting. We each had 100 points, and then you can select Pokemon to fill out your point total that ranged anywhere from 1 to 20 points. You could not have more than 10 Pokemon, but you didn't have to pick all 10, I guess, if you didn't want to, and you didn't have to theoretically use all your points. Almost everybody in the draft did like use up their point totals exactly on 10 Pokemon, because it's kind of the customary rule, but one person did not. So I guess you didn't have to do that, but I did as well. So I used exactly all 100 of my points because I thought it would make the challenge a bit more interesting, and I would have to get a little bit more creative with my team building. So I will face one person every single week. I will have to use 6 of the 10 Pokemon that I have selected, but I do not have to use the exact same sets or moves or whatever I want. Every week I'm allowed to customize my team to match and counter team my opponent. It will be very interesting to kind of get some really off-the-walls team building going. I've already started. My friend, as I said, I've never done draft before, so my friend Evan is helping me in prep, where we run matches and we look at team building options and stuff like that. So huge thank you to Evan. He's done quite a bit of draft, and it's really, really been helpful, even as we just start, as I prep for week 1. So yeah, it seems really cool. It seems like a really interesting time. And so I've never done drafts, so when I was picking my Mons, it was pretty interesting. I basically had two philosophical ideas when I decided on my Pokemon. First and foremost, fun fact, Incineroar is actually considered bad in draft. What it wants to do is be a bulky support mon, and it costs a lot of points. It is actually my most expensive pick. It wasn't 20, I think it was 18. I think it was an 18-point pick. But remember when I only have 100 points and I need to pick 10 mons, if I pick a Pokemon that is 18 points, I'm now relegated to basically having to pick a 2-point Pokemon. So that is a pretty huge commitment. Many prominent draft players have said that they don't think Incineroar is particularly good. I mean, Wolf just said it in the video he just released, quite a few others, but I just disagree. I don't know. I think that Incineroar has an incredibly diverse move pool. Its stats are fantastic. It can be offensive. It has a base 115 attack, which isn't like off the walls buku crazy, but is good, like pretty good. It's slow, but that's fine. Like there are other options for that, and its natural defenses work really well in its favor. So I said, my goal for this draft, my first ever draft, is to prove that Incineroar can be good in draft leagues. Do I think I'm going to win this whole thing? Absolutely not. I'm going against some like draft heads, you know, people that have been doing this for a really long time. Basically, I am with Necro. My goal is not to get last place. I would like to win one match. I might be underselling myself. I might be overselling myself. I literally don't know. I've never done draft before. I am pretty nervous, but if I do lose a lot and I don't do particularly well, that's okay. We're going to learn. We're going to try to get better, and we can use the lessons we learned from this time to kind of chuck ourselves into the potential next draft if I do another one. So I have no expectations going into this. I will just hope that I can win a set. I think that would be really cool, and then we'll kind of go from there. The second philosophy I had, so first philosophy was, I think Incin can be good. I want to build a team around Incineroar. That is the high point pick that I want to use. And so the rest of the team, because I took such a high point pick in the beginning, my philosophy is that, so as I mentioned, draft is not your grandfather's VGC, right? So in VGC, you have meta threats that are everywhere. So you want to build teams that counter those really prominent Pokemon and don't necessarily need to think about every Pokemon in the game. Draft is different. There is one Urshifu. Two, technically, because we split Watch Ursh and Dark Ursh into two separate mons, but you get the idea. There is one Rillaboom, one Incineroar. I have them. One of every mon. When I face Blood Moon Ursaluna, I will not face it again. That will be the only one that I face. And so my idea for this team was not necessarily to pick like these big, strong Pokemon that can handle the meta. It was to pick diverse, good Pokemon that can do quite a few different things and fill different roles depending on what I needed every week in the match. I think the draft is a bit different in that what constitutes good is more about its tool set and less about like specific stats and stuff like that. So my goal here was I picked Incineroar as my high point pick, as an 18-point pick. I did not pick a single 20-point Pokemon. Incineroar was my highest, and then everything else was lower than it. So I have some very interesting picks, but I ultimately went for cores. I wanted a Fire Water Grass core that was flexible, and I wanted a Fantasy core, which is Fairy Steel Dragon as well. So those are the two cores I went for, and then I kind of took everything from there. I think this team is very interesting. We will see if my philosophy works or not, but I do think it's a really cool team. It has some really underutilized Pokemon in VGC that I do think can be super strong in draft, and I'm really, really excited to try it out. So let's start with the man himself, Incineroar. That's right, I chose Incineroar, often thought to be bad in draft for a number of reasons. I already talked about it a little bit, but he has a good attack stat. His speed is slow, but he has great natural bulk, so you can just run him offensive if you want to. He only really gets Intimidate, but Intimidate's not necessarily bad inherently. I mean, everybody's going to have some form of physical attacker, but I mean, you could run Blaze. Like, Blaze is an option in draft, so you can do whatever you want. I will also mention that the draft is closed team sheet, best of 3 open Terra. That means when I go into the battle, the only things that I will know about my opponent's team are the 6 Pokemon and their Terra types and nothing else. I will have to deduce that information as we face off in a best of 3. That's really important. So I picked Incineroar. Incineroar has a really fantastic move pool. I mean, of course, it has standard like Fake Out, Parting Shot, Knockoff, Flare Blitz, but it gets great coverage. You get Acrobatics, which is really good. You get Brick Break for screens. You get Close Combat, which is like a really powerful fighting type move. Darkest Lariat is there if I think that somebody's going to set up a bunch. Like, that's definitely an option. You get Earthquake, so you can use that. Drain Punch. And then maybe like these special moves would be, but Iron Head is here. You get Leech Life for bug coverage. You can't Steep Blood, I guess. I think it gets Swords Dance. You get Swords Dance. You know what I mean? You get Sub, you get Taunt. Like, look at this moveset. This moveset is quite good. Will-O-Wisp, U-Turn, you know, all that stuff. Tons of coverage, tons of options here. I full-heartedly think that Incin can be this fabulous Techmon in draft. And so that's ultimately why I picked it. It can be offensive, it can be support, it can be both. You know what I mean? Like, it can do kind of everything you need it to and a little bit more. So it is the fire in my Fire, Water, Grass core. The next highest pick I chose is Regidrago. Regidrago is really fantastic because basically how you want to run it is the same as everyone else. You just want to click Dragon Energy, but you have ways you do that. Scarf Drago. You know, if they don't know that it's Scarf and they don't have a Fairy type, I can just click Dragon Energy, like Helping Hand, Terra Dragon, Dragon Energy, take 2 KOs and basically win the game right there. You know what I mean? Like if they're not prepared for it. Its coverage is kind of meh. It gets like Earth Power, I think, and some other stuff like that. But I think it's a really fantastic hyper offense mon. So if they're not ready for it, it can kind of just sweep through the game incredibly quickly. I do get some full things, so like Dragon Dance, if I want to go for a setup mon, you can go physical. I mean, his attack and his special attack is actually the same. And Dragon's Maw multiplies the damage, its offensive stat is multiplied by 1.5 times by using a dragon move. So you can actually use physical Regidrago, and it has the exact same damage output as special attacking Regidrago. So I think that's something important to remember. So you got like Crunch on the physical side. Let's see. You have Earth Power on the special side, Explosion, I guess, if you want to. Ice Fang, Hammer Arm, Outrage is really fantastic. You get Sub, you get Sleep Talk, all that jazz, and then some supportive moves. The main issue with Regidrago is that it's like actual defenses are kind of middling. So it only has 50 and 50, but it has an insane HP at 200. And the real thing for me with Regidrago is that it's not, I'm never really going to be playing it to stay on the field for a long time. It's there to deal a bunch of surprise damage and then be done. You know what I mean? So its goal is to dish out as much damage as it can as few turns as possible. So like the defenses don't really matter. You know what I mean? So you can run Speedy. I could run max HP, I guess, if I want. Like there's a ton of different options there. It is a fantastic dragon type. Terra Blast is obviously very, very good. So it can do a lot there. Yeah, Draco Meteor gets all those moves. I don't know. I thought Regidrago seemed like really good, particularly for secret scarf sets and stuff like that. So I think it has a lot of fantastic options. My next choice was Zapdos. Zapdos is actually particularly interesting. It does get the ability Static, which will help against physical attackers. But what I had noticed is that I'm not going to reveal the teams for anybody else because I want them to make their videos. But as people were picking teams, I noticed that Zapdos was a fantastic hard counter to multiple of the teams. You know, some people are building rain teams, which is really great. Some people are building sun teams, like both weather teams, like Zapdos works really, really well into that. Into the rain teams, I offer electric type damage into the water Pokemon, and I offer flying type damage into grass Pokemon that are there that think they're going to be protected by the rain. It can be supportive. It gets moves like Tailwind. You know, I could use agility if I want, I guess. You're normally going to run a special. I guess you could run physical, but a base 125 special attack is quite good. But I get Discharge, you know, I get Heat Wave, it could be Helping Hand, you know, you get Hurricane, I get Screens if I want, you could Roost. There's Tailwind right there. You get Thunder and Thunderbolt. You can pivot with U-Turn or Volt Switch. You get Weather Ball. Like, there's a ton of options here. And so it actually is, you get Eerie Impulse, you know, Electric Train if you want to do that. It has a pretty wide moveset. And I think that Electric and Flying is just really great because its only weakness is Ice, I believe, right? Like, it's Ice and, yeah, because Electric is neutral because of its electric typing, so it only has one weakness, and Ice is pretty hard to come by. I think only maybe one person picked an Ice-type Pokemon, if I remember correctly. So, Zapdos I thought was really good. Its stats are good. It can be supportive. You can have it hold a Rocky Helmet, or you can have it hold an offensive item like Choice Scarf or Choice Specs, or Choice Band, I guess, if you're going to run that. I thought it seemed really, really cool, so I said, you know what? I think Zapdos hard counters so many teams on the list that I see forming that I want to pick it because I can bring it to these matchups and it will always do something of value, which I think is really, really cool. Next, we have Sylveon. It is the fairy in my Fantasy Core, and Regidrago, obviously, the Dragon type. Sylveon, I thought, was a really fantastic budget pick. It was only 14 points, but it dishes out a ton of damage, which is the Pixelate ability. You can run Specs, you can run Scarf, I guess, if you want. You can run Pixie Feather, you can run Life Orb. A bunch of options here. Fairy type damage is always just really, really good. And when there's not that many poison types and there's only like, you know, one of each steel type running around, it's actually going to be really, really good into the meta. So I think that's really awesome. It can run fantastic tech moves because Terra Blast becomes a fairy type move with its ability Pixelate, which gives it a normal type moves into fairy type moves and a 1.2 power boost. So that means that I can run Terra Blast and then whatever offensive Terra that I want in order to really just start dishing the damage, which I think is really cool. It is not so slow. I mean, it's the same speed set as Instant, so you can run it in Trick Room, you can run it outside of Trick Room, it doesn't matter. A bunch of other stuff like that. Yeah, I just thought it was a really fantastic budget pick, and it was actually the last Pokemon I chose. So when I was picking Mons, what I did is I actually had certain Mons that I wanted to, and some of them were 1-pointers that you'll see at the end, because this is going in point order, so from most points costed to least points costed. So I actually chose Sylveon last because I had budgeted my points in a way that I saw that nobody else could pick it. So I was like, I can get my guaranteed 1-pointers and then I'll just grab Sylveon at the very end, because with how the points are allocated for the remaining rounds of the draft, nobody else can actually get Sylveon unless they want to have like 4 or 5 1-pointers, which I thought was really, really cool. I also, for the most part, had the most points available out of anyone all the way through to the end, because I didn't really pick that many super high caustic Pokemon, because again, my goal was to pick flexible, good Pokemon that people knew about but didn't know everything about, was kind of my thought process there. So yeah, Sylveon, really great. Doesn't get a ton of coverage, but its fairy type moves are hitting so hard. I mean, it gets like Calm Mind, so you could do that. I don't think it gets Nasty Plot, but it has a ton of really fantastic options. It's slow, so if you want to run it a Trick Group, you can. It gets Yawn, you get Swish, you know, it can be supportive if you wanted to. Overall, I'm just really, really excited to give it a go. Meowstic is next on my list. I picked Meowstic for a few reasons. So when I say that I wanted Pokemons that are flexible, Meowstic is number one. I first thought about it because I saw that Joey Pokeyame MD, who's like considered the king of draft, picks Meowstic basically every time for draft. And when I looked at its moveset, it's insane. It gets Misty Terrain and Psychic Terrain. It gets Rain Dance and Sunny Day. You know what I mean? It gets all of these tech moves. It gets Skill Swap if I want to do that. You know, it gets Prankster. First of all, it gets Prankster. That's kind of its big thing. I should mention that. It gets Prankster. But look at this. Look at these supportive moves. Fake Tears, Fake Out, Helping Hand, Light Screen. You get Nasty Plot, which could be fun. I don't really have a better Psychic type on this. Well, actually, that's not true. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Gets Psychic Noise to block healing. It gets Reflect. So you could run like Screens plus Light Clay. It gets Skill Swap. It gets Sub. It gets Sucker Punch if I want to do something funny with that. It gets Thunder Wave for speed control. It gets Yawn. Prankster Yawn for disruption. It gets Trick if I want to do that. It gets Charm to lower attack stats. Like all of these things. It can steal items with Covet. Like, look, it gets Imprison, you know what I mean? It gets, if I want to trap something again, I guess I can do Mean Look. There's Misty Terrain, there's Psychic Terrain, it gets Quick Guard, there's Rain Dance, you know, there's Sunny Day. Like all of these, look at these moves, dude. Like it gets them all in, it gets Prankster. It has so many options. Everybody's gonna have to be guessing what it's gonna do every single time I bring it to the battle. It just works really, really well. So I wanted something that could handle both weather and terrain in a single Pokemon. Meowstic gives me that because I have two options for both, which is really fantastic. So it's like if somebody has a Sun team, all I gotta do is bring Sunny Day Meowstic, and all of a sudden we're cooking with gas. You know what I mean? So I personally really thought that this was the standout pick of my draft. I'm really excited to see how well I can use Meowstic in this. I think it's gonna be really, really cool. The final Mon in my fantasy core is my Steel type Cobalion. Cobalion is Zamazenta at home. I love Zamazenta, and I thought that this would work quite well. It gives me both Steel and Fighting coverage, which I was kind of needing on the team. And most importantly, it gives me Fighting coverage that can't be intimidated in Body Press. You'll actually see that I have 2 Body Press Mons. You can see the other one on the screen right now. But I went with Cobalion because I wanted that secondary Steel typing, which I thought worked really well for it. So that way I have a Fighting type that's not weak to Flying, which could be, I think, a pretty important tech coming in later on. It also has a bunch of options. I can run Justified, so if I have things that can side beat up, and then I can just deal a bunch of damage with attack boosts if I want to do that. Oop, I went away. And it gets some really cool moves. I mean, it gets like Heavy Slam for fairy types, which is really powerful. It gets Body Press, so it can't be intimidated. It gets Iron Defense. If I want to set up, I can give it a Seed and set up a terrain. Something like that. I can Psych Up if I want to steal things. It gets Roar if I'm going against Trick Room. You know, its actual moveset is pretty fantastic. It does get Volt Switch. I did figure that out. It gets Volt Switch if I want to run it with a choice item, which is really funny. So that is an option there as well. Like everything on this mon, it just seemed to be pretty, gets upper hand. It just seemed to be really flexible and gave me that steel typing I wanted with an additional fighting type, which I think is always really, really useful in just to have on a team, because so many things are weak to fighting. And basically, if they want to Terra out of their fighting weakness, it's normally going to be something that is weak to or at least neutral to steel. So it's like if they're running Fairy Terra, like say they're a dark type that's running Fairy Terra, then all of a sudden I can Heavy Slam them for super effective damage. And this thing's heavy. Like Cobalion's pretty heavy, so it's going to deal a lot of damage. The water in my Fire Water Grass Core is Slowbro. The reason that I went for Slowbro in particular is it's insanely bulky, and I thought it was a really fantastic budget pick at only 9 points. That was actually less than 10 points, so it was less than the cost of a standard Pokemon. As well as a few other things. It gets amazing abilities in Oblivious, Own Tempo, and Regenerator. So it's basically, if you slap a Covert Cloak on this thing, and you give it Oblivious, the only way to stop it from setting up Trick Room is to KO it. That's it. It's the only thing you can do. And look at these stats, dog. Like, it's hard. Like, base 110 defense, base 95 HP, and base 80 special defense. Like, that's okay, but you can basically get yourself really bulky on the special side if you need to. It also gets Regenerator, so I can, like, switch out and be really annoying to continue healing. Own Tempo, I guess, is there, but I was mainly interested in Oblivious and Regenerator. Those were kind of the two basic Pokemon. And because I have Zapdos, this offers me both a Tailwind and a Trick Room mode. That was really my big thing. I wanted Tail Room options. So I have a Tailwind setter in Zapdos, and I have a Trick Room setter in Slowbro alongside Prankster T-Wave from Meowstic, which is kind of like Tailwind, but you kind of get what I'm saying. So Slowbro, I thought, really, really fantastic for the points. You can deck it out to make it really defensive. You can make it a special attacker. I think it gets Nasty Plot. Yes, it gets Nasty Plot, so you can make it a setup mon if you really want to. Like, it has so many options here. It's really versatile, and it helps in the Fire Water Grass Core because it gets Scald, which I thought was really huge, so it can burn physical attackers. It gets Ice Beam to potentially freeze them. It gets Slack Off to heal itself, you know what I mean? Disable is there if you really want to like go that route. Like, it gets all these options. It's super cool. Heal Pulse to heal his friends, you know what I mean? So I wanted Slowbro. I went with Chesnaught for quite a few reasons, actually. Chesnaught was actually my second pick. So I went my 18-point pick, which was Incineroar, and then my 5-point pick, which was Chesnaught, which got me a lot of flack. But Chesnaught offers a lot of viability on these teams. The two main things I'm interested in is the ability Bulletproof. Immune to bullet moves, so tech moves like Shadow Ball, Moonblast, all of that stuff, can't hit it, and it gets access to Wide Guard. So that means that against certain fairy types, which I do think that people will try to lean into fairy damage, it hard walls them. It hard walls other main mons, you know, Urshifu. It hard walls 3 of the Ogre Pawns. Yeah, it hard walls 3 of the Ogre Pawns. You know what I mean? It's like, it's actually really well suited into kind of those high-end picks. And so I thought it was a really fantastic budget pick. And its move selection is actually solid. It gets Knockoff. It can also Body Press, so I don't need to care about Intimidate. It can Coach. It gets Drain Punch. You can Belly Drum. It gets, let's see what else. Focus Punch. Hammer Arm for speed control. Or if I want it to be slower, I can use Hammer Arm. It gets Helping Hand, High Horsepower. Iron Head. Leech Sheet if I want to be really annoying, Poison Jab, you know, Rock Slide, Seed Bomb, Shadow Claw, like Spiky Shield for damage, Super Fang if I want to run something different. It gets Swords Dance. You know, look at all these moves. Like, again, it has a really wide selection of moves, and you can kind of tech it out however it wants. Its stats also pretty solid. 88 HP, base 122 defense is really fantastic, and then 75 special defense isn't great, isn't terrible, but it's pretty good. And so you're like, well, normally you'd be scared of Incineroar. I have the Incineroar. It is mine. I have it. So I think Chesnaught was really good. The last 2 Pokemon are my super budget picks. I have Venonat for a Sleepmon. It's actually really bulky with the Eviolite, which I thought was pretty fantastic. It gets Compound Eyes as an ability, so that moves have their accuracy multiplied by 1.3 times, and it gets access to Sleep Powder. So with Compound Eyes, Sleep Powder goes from 75% accurate to like 97.5% accurate. It is almost 100% accurate, which is really fantastic. This is my budget Amoonguss. Amoonguss was like 16 or 14 points or something like that, and I was like, listen, I love the little mushroom, but we got to go Venonat, dog. Like Amoonguss just is. You can't run it offensively like you can Incineroar. I guess you could. We had Storm Life Orb. But ultimately, I thought Venonat, for 1 point, was a really fantastic budget pick just because of its viability. It can, disable if I want to. It's really slow, base 45 speed, so it's going to outspeed most things in Trick Room. But yeah, it gets Rage Powder for redirection. That was another thing I really wanted. I didn't have any redirection yet. I wanted that. It gets Sleep Powder, it gets Sludge Bomb, which is a really powerful stab move that can poison stuff. It gets Toxic Spikes, all of this is a Poison Powder. It's really, really fantastic. Tinted Lens, and whatever, and don't use Runaway. But yeah, ultimately I thought Venonat was a really fantastic budget pick, and I wanted to give it a go. And the budget pick that I was really adamant on getting was Sentret. So you're like, Sentret? Why? First of all, it's 1 point. Really fantastic steal for a Pokemon like this. I think it's a really, really strong Pokemon in draft. The big thing is that it gets the ability called Frisk. So for me, Sentret has a collection of tools that make it perfect for draft. In VGC, it's kind of whatever. But in draft, it's amazing. So if you're not aware, Frisk is an ability that when you send Sentret out, it will identify the held items of all opposing Pokemon. Remember that this is closed team sheet best of 3, so I won't know the items on the Pokemon until I figure them out through play. Frisk immediately gives me an advantage because it will tell me the items on the opposing Pokemon, so I will immediately garner information. Second, it gets access to probably the best move in VGC in Follow Me. Second redirection user, which I thought was really important, which means that if I'm using Follow Me to get off some other strategy, I'm normally gonna wanna lead with Sentret, which is great because then that means I get Frisk immediately and I don't have to play any of the game without having that information. Sentret is there to redirect, get KO'd, and go to town. You know what I mean? That's why we have Sentret. It also gets access to the move Endeavor. So you can, if I set up Trick Room, it is very slow at a base 20 speed. That is slower than Torkoal, I'm fairly certain. I believe Torkoal is a base 22 speed. So that means if it's min speed, I can make it as slow as possible, knock down its HP EVs or whatever I need to do, and then Endeavor anything I want under Trick Room, which I think is really, really fantastic. It has all of these moves. It can also, if you want priority, it gets Quake Attack, it gets Sucker Punch, you know what I mean? It has all of this stuff. So I think it's a pretty great Mon. In draft in particular, I mean, I can slap a Sash on it. It'll always eat 2 hits. And then I can kind of do whatever I want with the partner Pokemon. So if I'm setting up Trick Room, then basically I just... so basically if I'm setting up Trick Room, I can just click Follow Me, and then either Sentret goes down, and I get in my Trick Room sweepers, or Sentret doesn't go down. It goes down to 1 HP if you attack it, and then I get to click Endeavor. And then something's going down, you know what I mean? So overall, really fantastic Mon. I thought for 1 point, it was basically a steal. I had to grab it. So that is the Ypsilanti Incins. We have Incin, Regidrago, Zapdos, Sylveon, Meowstic, Cobalion, Slowbro, Chesnaught, Venonat, and Sentret. I do get 6 trades, so I can trade up to 6 times during the course of the draft. At least for week 1, I have no intention of doing that. I like the Pokemon that I have, and I'm working on a game plan for my first opponent, which I'll reveal in the video. I don't really know how much I can say and not that kind of stuff, so it'll be really interesting to see, but I might make some changes. Remember, this is my first time, so I might be like, okay, I actually didn't need this component. Let's swap it out for something else, that kind of stuff. I can do that 6 times, which I think is really fantastic. But I am really, really excited. So thank you to Jay for inviting me. Thank you to everybody for playing. And thank you to Evan, who is coaching me as the coach as we prepare. He is helping me with my prep He's helping me in my team building. I'm very, very excited, and I think it's going to be a ton of fun. But that's enough of me yapping. This is just about 30 minutes, which I think is perfect. So thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know down in the comments below what you're most excited about in the draft. If you would like, what you would like the videos to look like. Obviously, I'll include the battles, win or lose, and I'll include team breakdowns for each week. But if there's anything else you would like about the draft, just comment down below, and I will make sure to add it in. But thank you all so much for watching. Please make sure to subscribe. It will really help out the channel. We are on our way to 2,000 subs. It would be amazing if I could get there before the end of the year, and I'm hoping that this can help us get us over that finish line. But most importantly, please remember that you are appreciated. All right. Peace.